Yeah, so it's just literally just 3 slides, just saying what this discussion is and what this discussion isn't. Yeah, so what it's not a forum for people of color to educate white people about race and how they could better themselves. So if there's a question or a prompt that you're not comfortable with or you just don't want to discuss, feel free to say it's not my responsibility to educate you on this matter. It's a bit, might be a bit aggressive, but I mean, it be.
I don't see that as aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
Pretty
the
nice.
next thing is, so what it is, an open discussion to reflect on South Africa in particular, given that's, I guess, our context of where we're living, and or maybe even broader Africa, and how racism persists at an institutional level and subconsciously within our biases. So I know it's a tough and tiring conversation, emotionally draining, especially given the week and that we've all had or the world has had. So I thank you all for joining, and I guess and feeling that you're able to I guess sit in this conversation. But like I said, if any point in the conversation you just don't want to be you don't want to answer, then just listen or leave, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Great. Okay, so number 1, I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. If I should need to move or rent, I can be pretty sure of being shown housing in an area I wish to live. I can go shopping alone, pretty well assured I will not be followed or suspiciously looked at by store personnel or customers. I can turn on the TV and see people of my race widely and positively represented. I can go into a supermarket and find the staple foods which fit my cultural traditions. Okay. I could be sure that my children would be given curriculum material that testified to the existence of their race.
Oh wait, I've been doing this the wrong thing the whole time.
Again, shame on you.
I'm sorry.
Should we start again? Or just...
No,
No, we're good.
I'm the problem. It's me.
It is you.
I can speak in public to a powerful male group without putting my race on trial. I can speak in I read that. I am never asked to speak for all the people of my racial group. I can be sure that if I need legal or medical help, my race will not work against me. I can choose blemish, cover, or bandages in flesh color and have them more or less match my skin. Cool. Yeah, so that's I guess 10. So if you have a lot of fingers standing up, that means that a lot of these things don't apply to you, right? And if you don't have any, or if you have little, then pretty much, I guess, it's a proxy of the privilege that you have, right? Cool.
That's all 10 up.
How do we justify the looting of stores? The Fees Must Fall protests lost a lot of support once they began to destroy property. Do people feel this is the only way to get a genuine response from government? Why are Black-owned stores and brands being looted? People who have fought injustice to get to their position only have their things destroyed. Not coming from a judgmental perspective, I just want to hear what people say.
So I think at the beginning when I sort of saw the looting, I was a bit like shocked. And I think my initial response was a negative one, like why would people loot, or why did it get to that stage? But then like as I started reading more, I was starting to see that the system developed by white people values property higher than it values Black lives. So it's more shocking to see a store being looted than it is to see someone being killed by a police officer who's supposed to keep them safe. I think there's also this idea that Black people are supposed to not be angry and we should be forgiving and we should be peaceful protests because that's what's worked in the past. But like, that's not what has worked in the past. We had sort of like the 60s like peaceful movement, and then we kind of had the more radical movement, and it was all of those like movements that got us to freedom. It's not like, I mean, and it's like freedom. It's not like there is a legitimate need for violent protest at times.
I think what people need to understand is that places like America were born on the backs of Black people, and when they were never paid for that labor and were never given they didn't receive payment for all the stuff they did in the past. And so you can almost see the looting as a way of getting back the money that they built. And I think, people need to understand that no one wants violence. No one wants to see people doing that. But you've got to understand the desperation and the need for that when they are never listened to in any other way. If they're not listened to in everyday conversations, how do you think they're going to get listened to in a room full of white males, essentially, in these big cabinets and things? And if you go back to the Black Lives Matter in like 2014 when they started, and you look at their posts, they were meeting peacefully. They were engaging peacefully. In 2014, though, nothing has changed. So something needs to have happened to get some sort of attention. And unfortunately, this is what it ends up being. And so people need to understand where it's coming from, even if they don't agree with it.
Yeah. On that, with the whole backdrop, of everything that's going on, I want to first say that when it comes to looting and all that sort of stuff, I see it less as, you weren't paid for it, but it's just, as you said, that's a societal systemic issue. And so who are the poorest within, let's be talking American context, who are the poorest? It's the minorities, right? And so that, coupled with the fact that it is known, especially in Minnesota, that the police started the looting and white people started the looting. There is actual evidence showing that they started that to get a negative reaction. And that's what they know. That's what they do. It's a complete sort of police sort of state, right? Where if you do anything wrong, slightly, you deserve to have anything happen to you. So looting, oh my goodness, these people are doing this, how dare they do all of that? But the issue is that, first of all, if you see an open store and you're desperate, it's coronavirus, you've lost your job, you're far more likely as an African American to contract and die from coronavirus because of the systemic issues in healthcare and all that stuff. So that as well. And you're not going to take something. If you're desperate and you see a shop store that's already open by, unknown white assailants. And so I see that as a total cop-out to be so obsessed with property versus, as Fiona said, actual lives, actual people. So yeah.
So, and I think it's also, I think the question says, won't the government listen in other ways? Haven't there been other ways tried, and have they listened? No. Who must they go to? The same institution that has policemen and lawyers that are killing the people anyway, right? So if it's the same people that are meant to be protecting you that are killing you, that belong to the government, that belong to the state, where are you supposed to go, right? And I don't think it's the idea that they or I don't think it's the full sentiment that we're breaking property because it belongs to the white man. It's more like,
exactly,
how are we going to get people's attention, right? The guy was on the floor saying he can't breathe, and the guy just carried on. If that isn't going to make people listen, what else must they do? Must they sign a petition and take it to the government? And they'll be like, oh shit, yeah, I didn't listen when he was nearly dying and when I murdered him, but I'll listen now to your piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
So that's just my...
And I mean, sorry, just a quick comment. It's also like when the leader of your country, the president, is also a racist. It's like, even if you complain within the institutions of your country, it's like, well, the tone is racism. Like, So
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter what you do, everything is working against you.
Can I just say a comment I read on like one of these posts where it was like they were calling out Trump or whatever, and then or like it was a racial like debacle or something, and then at the end the guy was like, yeah, we know she probably voted for Trump, and then all the comments were like, yeah, I was with you until you like brought Trump into this, and then someone's comment was like, just because he's racist doesn't make his followers racist, and I was just like,
That's literally what it means.
It's so funny.
That's what it means.
yeah. So I think it's Ruby next, and then Abdullah.
So I was just going to say that I think also sometimes, yes, there is looting going on, but it's also a question of what the media focuses on, because I think that it's like a question of, yeah, sometimes there is looting, but it could also be a really small percentage of these mainly peaceful protests. But it's got to do with the fact that like the juxtaposition of the policemen kneeling versus the people looting. I think that it's also interesting to focus on like what the media portrays versus what's actually happening, because I've seen like live streams from people that I follow at the protests, and it doesn't seem to be the same level of violence or anger as displayed in lots of the clips that you'll see on the news sites. And then also again, I saw a video of a lady shouting at a group of protesters who were mainly white males who'd come into her neighborhood and started looting, or not looting, vandalizing a lot of property. And I think it sometimes happens that people get caught up in the violence of it or the anger of it and end up defacing things, that it's not necessarily the Black people who are fighting for their lives. It could be white protesters who, as someone said earlier, are trying to rile people up or think that this is like them standing in solidarity. And this particular clip, it was a lady in a poor, mainly Black neighborhood who was saying, why are you coming in here and vandalizing our property when we're the people you're trying to fight for? So I think that it's like, that trying and isolate what is actually going on is really hard, and amongst like all the rhetoric and all the media conglomerations like focusing on parts of the protest that will bring them followers kind of thing.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Sorry, I just quickly on the media aspect is that there's so much proof that people just do media stunts. So, for instance, the kneeling. I'm glad you brought the kneeling of the police up, because every time they talk about the kneeling of the police, they take a photo and media goes and goes off and does all the stuff. Then they say 45 minutes later they came in and tear gassed us in the same spot.
Yeah.
So there's no. It's all a facade. It's all a facade.
It's so hard to get a clear picture when you're not there, and when people are trying to make the police seem like the good guys in the situation.
Yeah, and I think these media outlets are trying to sell. They're trying to make money. The more people buy their stuff, the more emotional they can make it, the more they can sell. So you can't actually trust what they're saying, because they're earning money off making it emotionally charged, and often not actually reporting the facts clearly, but rather just making it newsworthy.
I also think just a lot something else. Sorry, I don't know if anyone was. Oh, Abdullah, you're next.
No, it's cool.
Just about the looting, I think often it was corporations that were targeted. For example, Target, who were big corporations who were known for not paying their staff properly during COVID or not being sympathetic to their staff. So it's kind of like looked up against the background of everything that's going on in the world. Sometimes there's a deeper meaning than people just going in and taking what they want from a store.
I think also just to add to what you guys were saying about like the media and the facade and stuff. I mean, I don't know, when I was going through my Instagram and stuff also like yesterday and the day before, I was just seeing things burning. I don't know if you guys also noticed, it's just like buildings on fire. And I was like, whoa, what's happening with all this? Like, why is that what people are like trying to focus on. And I was also just thinking about, it's all about attention generally when it comes to media. It's like, how do we get as much attention as possible? And how do we create as much conflict as possible? Because conflict creates engagement, brings in attention brings in cash, ads, all that jazz. I mean, that's just generally how social media is sort of algorithmically created at the moment. It's like, let's make as much tension as possible to get people to engage and post as much as possible so that we can make as much money off them as possible. Okay, that was just like one thing that I wanted to bring up. And the other thing was like just trying to relate it to the South African context and, how things are going on over here. I think also trying to think of like the fees must fall movement and how, when things got a bit, I don't know, like, out of control in that situation to like at some point, I guess. It's just like, how else do we get people to listen? Like, I think that was also quite a valid question, is that when you go up and tell them, hey guys, like, this is not okay. Like, we can't really afford all this and we don't know what to do. Then they're like, oh, okay, and like, they just kind of like sidetrack it. But then once you kind of show up and you bring the energy and you like, obviously like it does reach a point where it's like unnecessarily like burning things down, and it does get a bit extreme sometimes. But and that also relates to what Ruby was saying earlier on about like just like sometimes it's like these random people who aren't even part of the protest just come in and cause more tension. Yeah, so I'm just thinking of a lot of things right now. But the point is that it does need some sort of engagement, and then that usually is fed in with other random factors that make it a lot worse than it actually is meant to be.
Please try and help people get a better understanding of cultural appropriation. Do we think that is something we should talk about, or
I feel like
rather
that's something you can research really easily.
It's very
Yeah.
easy to research.
Yeah.
Is it? Don't take aspects of other people's culture who are lower within the hierarchy of you.
Perfect. Yeah.
Keep it moving.
Okay, and then I guess the last one would be how to react when you call out a friend for remaining silent and they attack you. That's not a friend, bro.
Drop them.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Goodbye. If you are arguing with someone, my thing is, if you are seriously arguing against someone who calls you out for something, hey, there's something wrong. Someone says, hey, this is problematic. I've definitely been called out for things that I've said. What do I say? I go, oh, crap, whoa. Let me reevaluate my standpoint on this. Let me reevaluate it. It's okay to say you're wrong. Why are people so obsessed with, being right all the time? I think that's the root of the problem, Yeah.
White fragility.
I've really been wanting to voice something to you guys, and this is part of, I think, goes to this question, is I sometimes feel that white people at the moment are apologizing, but not apologizing with actual sincere apologies on social media. And I'm finding that white people are certainly standing up in like some positions, and they're all like self-righteous about it and speaking about their experience. And I can tell you, these are the exact white people that are not even educating themselves. They're not going to listen to a podcast. They're not going to understand or pick up a book and read. They're not actually going to read through actual posts and give themselves an actual understanding to the trauma that is associated to what's happening. And I'm really finding it difficult in a sense because it's disingenuous and it's just going to perpetuate the problem afterwards. And I almost feel like they're apologizing because they know they're going to be called out. Because these are the boys, and I'm going to actually say they mostly are the white males. They are apologizing on social media. And I just don't know what to say because I actually want to call them out and be like, what are you actually doing? This is not helping the situation. And I just feel it's disingenuous. But that's it. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Jordan. I actually wanted to ask, maybe this is a conversation that we can ask or throw to the white people. How do you guys feel about calling out your friend? Like, you're in a group, there's, I don't know, 10 of you, everyone's drinking, having a good time, and someone says something that's offensive, like racially. What are the steps that you think moving forward you can take to kind of to get your point across without there being any violence? And really, I saw something on Instagram that said, that basically shows you the steps on how you can get someone to engage with you on those kind of topics in a public space. And I think, just from you guys, what do you think is the most practical way?
Also, coming on Jordan's point, that I think that's when it's up to people like you guys, I hope, and to call those people out when they don't display the behavior they said they were going to, and when they don't make a genuine change. I mean, a lot of these things are said behind closed doors. I mean, some of us have a better idea of what happens because we went to mostly white private schools, and, you know, white people feel comfortable to sort of be racist in those environments. But a lot of things happen when we're not there. And also, it is exhausting to have, and you also almost become the person that hops on a lot. You're like the negative person, the one no one wants around, the one who isn't fun. So the more people are calling out this behavior, and the more people who look like the people perpetuating this kind of behavior are calling you out on it, hopefully it starts to create a change. And I think real bravery is not really posting it on social media when it's trendy. It's about doing it in the tough moments and the uncomfortable moments when you have to confront the people around you, whether it's friends or family.
Topic that I remember in, like, maybe, I think I was in second year, and we all went to, it was Forries in Newlands. And there was an incident that happened to two of my black friends, and like quite a racial incident at the bar, whatever, with like older white folk. And myself and another mate sort of, I mean, the two smallest people I know, try to speak to these guys and be like, nah, guys, like, what are you doing, whatever. And the thing that was really interesting for us was how these guys who were initially obviously not happy with the black guys in the room, we almost became a bigger problem than anyone else in the whole room because we were standing up for them. So they were kind of thinking like, well, who are these white folks now, backing these guys? And still to this day, like, when we speak about what happened then, like, 'cause it was quite a scarring moment for all of us in a way, especially for them, and just seeing how, like, you know, because I think at high school we were in a bubble, and then in the real world, like, how at a place like Forries you're interacting with broader society, and it was just so real. But what really shocked us was, at school we were like a brotherhood. Everything was about the bonds you have with your fellow pupils and all this kind of stuff. And then it's almost like when we're in that bar that night, that brotherhood was lost, because as soon as it became a racial issue, no one was willing to stand up for their brothers anymore. And I just think everyone was like shook, like it was just, you know, like 2 out of the 50 white oaks there. So as soon as it becomes like something political or whatever, people tend to shy away. And I think that's, you know, like what Isma's saying now, I think people, as soon as it becomes political, people just back out. And I agree, it's such a challenge. Like, how do we confront that?
I think the first thing is every white person needs to admit that they're not going to be right, that they're not going to say the right thing, and that they've messed up in a lot of ways themselves. I think the thing that stops so many white people from calling people out, from talking about this, from engaging with this in some sort of way, is that they feel like they're not perfect, or they've done stuff, or they can't engage, or they don't know what to say. But say something, even if it's not right, just engage. And I think, you know, like, just beginning those steps and calling your friends out is the first one. You don't have to be perfect. You can be like, yeah, dude, I'm not perfect myself, but what you just said was really not right. And I think one of the things you can do to make those situations more comfortable is call that person out and say, I'd like to speak to you later about it. Because I think what happens is people say, oh, you know, that's so funny, and they like off play it in an awkward way, like, you know, to make it all seem okay. And I think if you say like, hey, let's talk about this later, that goes and sits in there, and they're like, you know, they have to take responsibility at some stage. It's not just going to go away with like, you know, some oak over there saying like, oh, you know, calms, just relax, bro, like it's just a bra, you know, whatever. So yeah, that's the way like I'm doing it. I mean, it's not perfect, but we've all got to start somewhere. And I think it is difficult. It's difficult to have those conversations with your friends, with your boyfriends, with your families. But I think just go at it from a human point. Just be like, no one's perfect. You know, I think when people go in with this, I know better than you, I'm better, you know, I'm less racist than you. Dude, we all not perfect here. Every white person I know has contributed to this in some way. And by not doing something about it, by not talking, you're just adding fuel to the fire. Get over yourself and get involved.
Is it Naledi now?
Ruby can go. I'm still thinking.
I was just going to say that I think sometimes with more I don't know if the right word's covert, but things that are more subtle, it's often passed off as being directed at someone rather than a race thing. And I think that that's something that I read, that you must assume everything is about race, because that's the only way that you acknowledge its omnipotence in life. I think the thing is that you know, in South Africa especially, our history is race. Everything was about race. Where we lived, where we went, where we were allowed to go, that was all surrounded, and you can't expect that to go away. It lives on in many generations. And I think that the thing is that's hard sometimes in South Africa, is that it's like now you're expected for it all to be better, so you think, oh no, it's not really about race. But I think everything is still to some extent. And I think that it's much easier for Black people or people of color to know, because their parents and their families have experienced it. Whereas for white people, they think that it's, you know, everything's great. And so it's not about race. It's about like something wrong that you did, or like, you know, for example, George Floyd was killed over a $20 fraudulent $20 bill. And like loads of white people have done that before. So it's not about the fact that he'd done something wrong, because it doesn't matter like what you did wrong, you don't deserve that. So I think that it's like people are easy to be like, oh well, you did something wrong, so you deserve to be punished, kind of thing. As like that's obviously an extreme example, but like in friendship groups, it's often like, oh, they're just annoyed with you. It's not like about your race or something like that. So I just think that it's like, yeah, acknowledging race and being open about it, as opposed to being like, yeah, we trying to ignore it as an issue
instead of ignoring it.
Yeah.
Is everyone happy to move on to the next one? So that kind of answers all like the Instagram questions. So going back to the prompts, is there any particular prompt that someone wants to talk about?
Intersectionality! Oh, surprise! It's me! I cannot insist enough. Within every category of person, if you do not support every person that fits into Black Lives Matter, no matter where you are, first of all, it starts off with actually supporting Black lives. Basic stuff. But within Black Lives Matter, within any sort of advocacy for human rights, the issue comes about is who falls through the cracks. And who falls through the cracks, right? People who are the most marginalized, right? And so when a Black trans woman is killed or beaten up, the outrage is lesser than that of someone else, and it's just absolutely wrong. And what I want to say is that we always need to look from an intersectional perspective. Support. Don't say, oh, we only need to focus on this one case. For instance, like George Floyd. It's very easy to say, let's focus only on George Floyd, when there are a multitude, an absolute multitude of people who in the exact same situation in terms of being killed by the police, right? Who are from multiple different intersections in their lives. And I think it's really important to say, okay, this is not just a singular issue. It is such a massive, broad issue with being affected by people, like the real marginalized people. Like if you are Black and disabled, there's a crazy statistics. I'm not sure what it is, but it's like you're 2 times more likely to be physically attacked by the police. There was someone killed during the 2014, I remember, because he couldn't comply with what they were saying because he was disabled. He was mentally disabled and couldn't comply with what they were saying, and they killed him. And those sort of cases need to be fought for as well, because we need to fight for everything. If we only fight for one issue, it's never going to get solved. We've got to fight for every single issue at every single level. So
yeah. So like my question to you, Naledi, is like these issues happen, like similar to George Floyd, across the world very often, right? And there were cases in South Africa around the beginning of lockdown where you had people in townships being killed by military force, whatever it might be. And I had one particular case. Yeah, regardless, like these things are happening all the time, but America has a particular media power and media presence that then dominates the entire narrative, right? And so, like, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on just like this conversation is so American-centric, and so like what's going on in America. And I always feel I know so much more about American politics and the American socioeconomic state than the South African one, and like that's just such a problem. And yeah, I want to throw that information out there and see what you guys think about that.
yeah, I think it's important because it's so important to bring it up. And it's a problem because the thing is that we don't have the facilities. Who do the police target in South Africa? Marginalized, poor people, poor Black people, right? And in America, it's literally just any Black person that they see. So the difference is that those can be upper class, higher class, middle class, whatever class kind of people. But in South Africa, it is, you are so far down the hierarchy that it's so hard to get, first of all, coverage on your stories, media coverage, unless you were there, how are you supposed to know what happened? And support, because everyone's like, oh, but we don't know the full story. So it's a very important issue to bring up.
Isma, do you go? Isma, sorry.
Yeah. I think, Tamia, it's also got to do a lot with power and what we've been educated on. I think most of us in school were educated on like the Cold War, the French Revolution. So in the media, if I see something like America and Russia going through this, I'm more keen to hear that because I have some form of background on that. I know they don't like each other. I want to know what's more about that, and I think you'd have the same like energy if you had learnt about what happened in Congo or what happened in Egypt. You know what I mean? When you see those things in the media, you'll be like, oh, I know something about that. What's happening now? So I think it's a lot to do with that. And also we've got this value of money, and we all know that America economically basically brings aid to Africa. So we all want to know what's happening next, what's the next move. So I think it has a lot to do with that. And once we start having conversations about things in Africa and what's happening in Africa, because luckily that's what happens in our household. And that's why I'm so interested in Africa, is because it's the conversations we've had. So maybe when we start changing those conversations, maybe that will start to change. But that's a good point.
And even in travel terms, like people need to think about, I want to see the rest of Africa. I want to see the Congo. I want to see this. I don't just want to see the Eiffel Tower and whatever other big European monuments. I think another thing is with this intersectionality debate is, you can't say you're for Black Lives Matter, but then you weren't there during the gender protests. You weren't there when Black women were getting literally killed at masses. You can't say you're for Black Lives Matter, but then you're not there for when, all sorts of other countries are being killed in the xenophobia violence. You know what I mean? I think people must really be critical of themselves in these situations. I mean, I have to be critical of myself too. We all need to be. And we need to make sure that we're not just like saying, hey, now that it's affecting this group, I'm going to support it. But you need to look at all the things. And it's difficult because you don't want to take away from one movement at the moment and make it about another movement, but notice that there's always going to be links.
I think one of the dangers also is, sorry, Tamir, were you about to say?
No, go for it, please.
I think one of the dangers is that when something's like a mass social media trend, that people will be more willing to buy into it, whereas when it's just about an ordinary person, they don't have that same kind of buy-in power, which I think is quite problematic and perhaps speaks to what Jordan was saying about people just being disingenuous.
So like one of the challenges that I experienced along with this, and what you were mentioning now in regards to you can't be silent during some things, is that there's just too much shit going on in the world to talk up to everything, right? Like you have Rohingya Muslims being massacred in Myanmar. You have re-education camps of Muslims as well in like China. Like anywhere you look, there's a lot of shit going on, and you just don't have enough personal capital to invest in everything. And that's the thing. I suppose it's quite challenging. It's like you've got to sometimes choose your battles of the things that you're passionate about. And sometimes it's hard to know, like, should I be passionate about this? Like, when should I choose to really commit myself to this movement or that movement, whatever it might be? And me, it's like you there has to be something innate within you that's going to make you, maybe, I don't know. That's just some
I think educating yourself on everything should be the goal.
Sorry.
Yeah. I think I understand, like, you have like limited social capital and choosing what you want to, I guess, pursue or invest in. But then there's the danger of if you follow what you're just passionate about, you're just going to be passionate about the things that affect you, right? And then we're just in the same issue of like, you're only going to talk about things when it inconveniences you, when it's someone like, oh, I have a black male friend, cool, let me stand up for them, right? But when it was the gender-based thing, I don't really have that many friends that are girls, so I'm fine. But then the guy has a girlfriend, oh, now I'm really passionate because I have a girlfriend and now she's affected by this, right? And I remember having this discussion of, maybe back to the intersectionality thing, is that we have this idea, let's get the black man, like maybe I remember someone saying this, a black woman saying this, let's get the black man over the fence and then we'll come back for the rest of the people, right? But it doesn't work like that. You kind of have to be aware of everyone, or we're gonna just reach like the top of the pyramid of the people that are like, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, Sonia,
so
it's almost like the farce of trickle-down economics. Like everyone kind of wants to be the white man. Like as long as I feel like that's why people have a problem a lot with white feminists, because white feminists just want to be white men and then leave everyone else. But I think also, just to answer what Tamir was saying, if you align yourself as a fair, just, like equitable person, then you'll find yourself on the right side of a lot of matters. Like no matter what the matter is, you'll be able to like critically assess the evidence presented and be on the right side. So I think it's more about you aligning yourself with amplifying the voices of the minority groups, ensuring there's equitable and a large pool of resources available to all. Like once sort of basic principles come into mind, you'll kind of get it right. But I think that's what the hard part is we tend to be on the right side of things we can understand or things that benefit us. But to truly be on the right side, it's no matter where I stand, what would be the best option for everyone involved. So yeah, I think it is difficult to keep up, and I think a lot of like Black people have been feeling overwhelmed by all the information. But it's kind of like, take in what you can, make the decision you can, step away when you need to, but don't let things that are important die down because they're not trendy. And
basically, as you said, oh, there's so much going on, what am I supposed to do? I think it's just when you see something, when you've researched something, just do as much as you can. And that is good. It's a step in the right direction, because you can't solve every issue, but you can help teach people or show people more about these issues. Yeah.
Could I just say one point on that? So it is overwhelming having all this information around, and I know for me, whenever I get overwhelmed, apart from taking a nap, I'm always like, okay, cool, like what's the step I can take, like, and as soon as I get that one step done, things feel a lot better, right? So I think maybe be aware of these things, advocate, be the voice for it, right? But like you said, you can't get involved in everything. So when you do get involved, make sure that's like an actionable change, right? So for what I do is I mentor some girls that are in KZN, rural KZN, and I'm helping them with matric, right? That in itself can be really overwhelming, because I'm just like, every time I tutor them, I end up being really sad or crying after, because I'm like, they're smart, they're amazing, they're funny, they have all these personality traits, but just because they're poor and they don't have like access to Wi-Fi or past papers or proper teachers, they're in the situation that they are, right? And now they have this uphill battle of like passing matric, right? But then I'm able to like channel my energy into that. I'm like, okay, my 6-month goal is to help these girls pass matric, right? And then, okay, I will advocate for everything else. I'll be the voice for everything else. But my actionable step is helping these girls. So like channeling your energy into one of these things, that not just speaking about the one, but having actionable steps for that one, I think is really helpful.
That's awesome.
Obviously.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, is it?
It's Abdullah.
Yeah, Abdullah.
Oh, George, you can go.
Oh, go for it. Promise, go for it.
And I was thinking also just about how, with regards to, like the whole posting on social media and stuff, I think you really need to keep your intention clear. And that just comes back to the whole being disingenuous, and like you mentioned also, George, earlier on. A lot of the time we just get really overwhelmed with like, oh, everyone's doing this, I need to do this to show everyone that I'm also part of this thing. And then you kind of lose track of like why you're actually doing it, I think. And I find that a lot of the time, if you just try to find something, like also, I think Fiona and Sunaina also mentioned, choose something that's aligned with your values, something that you genuinely believe in, that you support. And yeah, always start with why. Like, why am I doing this? Why is this important to me? Why is this important to the world around me? And yeah, try and always work from a set of principles. Yeah.
Sorry, just to hop into what Abdullah was saying, I think like with the Blackout Tuesday and the black squares, I think people who had nothing to say before, you kind of know from personal experience are racist, were busy posting Blackout Tuesday, Blackout Tuesday, Blackout Tuesday. And it's like, that doesn't add anything to the conversation. If anything, it makes it seem what might have been genuine be very disingenuous. So I think it's not about what's trendy in activism. It's about actually wanting a fair, just, and equitable world where everyone has an opportunity to sort of thrive. You know what I mean?
And I think maybe for those people that like do some self-reflection and be like, okay, have I up to this point actually been for this movement? And maybe if you don't post a black square and you read a tweet that's like, I see who's really silent, like don't take that personally. Just see that as a starting point for you starting to make decisions, right? To make sure that it's in line with that. So like, we're going to get criticism, I feel like, whatever you do. But make sure that you make those changes that no one really, I don't think you need to make sure that like everyone sees the changes that you do, right? And if people still perceive you as being someone that hasn't done anything, but you know that you're doing small changes in your daily life, but you didn't post a black square, be okay or content with that fact that you are making a change.
From a very privileged house, so I went to a nice school, I'm white, I'm, none of these big movements have appealed to anything that I have experienced personally. I think it's also important to be, strong and say, okay, if someone comes at me with, saying all this stuff, no one, society hasn't ever come at me before. Systemic problems have never come at me before. And so what can I do to be like, okay, let me try and work on myself, or let me try and take what truth is in what they say and apply it. So for instance, for my perspective, right, I've always grown up mixed race, right? Still have strong connections to my Black family for sure. And I definitely feel rooted in Blackness, 100%. But I will forever and always, I wrote a whole thesis on this, speak about the things and privileges that you get from being mixed race or being lighter skinned. And although I'm most often perceived as Black, which I'm, don't see a problem with, my thing is that when it came to schooling at white private schools, I was forever fetishized, and so although it's a big issue, it's a much smaller issue than having your self-confidence shut down constantly by saying, oh no, you too dark, or we don't go for people like you. So I think it's an important thing that everyone goes through, and everyone has a step of saying there's something that I know that I privileged from, and therefore need to make sure that I check myself whenever I do, and not hop onto conversations. So I try not to hop onto conversations that don't affect me, and say, this is my problem. I'll share people's voices, but I won't say, okay, but my issue, I've dealt with this. I think that's a lot of things that people say. It's like when someone says, oh, you privileged because you're white. They go, oh, no, but I've struggled. I've suffered. I've had to work for where, it's this defensive standpoint. Sorry, it's very long. Yeah. But yeah, don't be defensive.
Jordan.
A very quick comment, and I think I almost wanted to respond to what Isma said in the beginning, and then it actually sparked my mind today after you said about the action step. And I think that for me is something that I quite resonates with in terms of this whole movement and its continuity and going forward, because part of my concern is very much when we had the gender-based violence movement and everything about Uyunene, and what happened after a while. Well, it became old news. The conversations around heterosexual males, by what I understood, the same slurs were dropped, the same sort of behavior was perpetuated. And my concern is that we're going to have not just white people now apologizing. We're going to have in a few weeks' time, people are going to be at a dinner table, and in their white circles and their white cliques, and the same sort of slurs I feel are going to be dropped. And that's, I think, what's sort of disturbing me, because I'm not sure how that is going to get removed or eradicated or whatever it may be. And I don't know, is it because we've got to, how many, I call out people, but then at the same time, I'm always it's people prefer actually not to have me around because they know I'm sensitive. So how do we break that barrier? It's just quite I don't know, just an interesting comment.
I don't know if there's a line. Sorry, guys, my camera, the Wi-Fi is not great. Just to add on to George, with obviously making sure that this isn't just something that is up on social media for a while and that loses traction and people just go back to their normal lives, and about actually making a lasting impact in the hearts of people around the world, and especially obviously in South Africa. I was watching a video on YouTube called The Doll Test, and what really shook me up and just it was terrible how it was these kids that were younger than 4 years old or younger than 5, and they weren't actually at the age yet where they were taught to hate, because obviously, you know, there's all these ideas how, you know, people are born loving and they're taught to hate, but these are children who I don't know, they're so young and they have these dolls put in front of them, and immediately just the white and the black doll, and which is the good pretty doll and which is the bad ugly doll. And it just, at that age they're already seeing that in the people around them. So I guess my question is, what can we actually do to make sure that the generations coming before us are brought up differently? So yeah, that's just my question.
That's a good question. I don't think I have the answer for that. So maybe someone else can chip in on that. I just wanted to speak to what Jordan was saying. And I think in general, what I found really frustrating on social media is a lot of my white classmates that are like, yes, guys, we need to start the conversation. You need to learn about this and you need to reflect and you need to. And I know a lot of things that they've done before, you know, and for me, I mean, this personally for me, I want someone to be like, you know what? Yeah, I did X, Y, Z, and I was an asshole and I was racist and I did X, Y, Z, but now I'm moving forward and I'm learning. Instead of this whole, here's a link, guys, donate, here's this, reflect. And I'm like, why don't you start with yourself? Like, I've seen a lot of things that you're doing and people putting up scriptures, like all the Christian people in my class putting up scriptures of God and love. And I'm like, that's great. But until you yourself sit down and think about it and go, shit, I was racist because I did X, Y, Z, but now I've learned this and this is a resource that's helped me. And I think this will be helpful for the rest of you. Then I'm not here, I don't want to hear it. And I think at this point, I was saying yesterday is people are aware. Nothing on social media now is about awareness. If at this stage, at this big age, we still don't know what racism is, we don't know what oppression is, we don't know that all these issues are around, then it's late. It means that you've decided not to listen to those things. My thing is, awareness now for me is over. What's the actions? What are the things you're taking? Why are you not being accountable? I want people to be accountable. I want people to have actions. I want people to move. I want, like, I'm part of the Surgical Society, and right now this week, all we're doing is we are rechecking all our projects, all our policies, what is happening moving forward. And that's what I want to see with everyone else. So talk, but put your money where your mouth is. And that's all I want. I want people to acknowledge that and be accountable. But yeah.
I was just thinking about, linked to what Isma said, is a lot of the schools also are now coming under fire. I know my old school is. And I think that that's a really useful, I suppose, I think it's calling people out. This is obviously a lot more vocal because people, it's kind of an institution as opposed to specific people that are named. So I think that that is a way to move forward, is, as we've said, to address these things and call people out. I think the problem comes in also where, as you were saying, how people don't acknowledge what they've done in the past, is sometimes people don't realize like their microaggressions or things that they've said that are actually really racist, and they aren't, they move past it thinking that whatever they said was completely okay. Which is really hard. I know, like, that kind of amnesia and then thinking that you've moved on, but not acknowledging, and it becomes hard for people to accept that you've moved on. So I suppose I don't know what the answer is. Like, do you bring it up with people who have in the past said something, or do you take it that people have moved on? I don't know. Have they really, like, even though they're posting these things, have they like changed their mindset? Will they call someone out? Will they say the same things? I don't know the answers.
Tom, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I truly think from conversations I've had with my white friends and white families, whoever, I really do think for the first time a lot of people are engaging in things. People are understanding what anti-racism means. People are engaging. If those are meaningful changes, I guess we can't answer. But I really think like no one, but very few white people are going to say they've messed up. Very few white people are going to say, I'm learning and unlearning. But as a white person, I can tell you from discussions and what I've seen, I think people are, even if it's a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Or is it me next, Sunny? I think like relating to what Isma said and a bit of what Taylor was saying about like lasting, like how do we ensure that we never kind of end up where we are now? I think it's about really just doing the work. It's not about it's not about just donating. It's not just about amplifying sort of these issues. It's about actually looking at yourself and understanding that for white people, the system is built to favor you. So no one from any other race is going to thrive, or any other, not a cishet male, white, is going to benefit from the system because it's built in such a way that it only favors one particular person. So unless you're ready to dismantle everything that the system has taught you to be true, and what you feel is fair, and what you feel is this is how things should be, is not how things should be. And once you start to see that, it becomes a lot easier to look at it, to like just see an injustice. And like I said earlier, it's like to be on the right side kind of thing. I think you have to understand that I've even had to do it where you have to question everything. You have to say, is this really the only way that things can be done? And if it is the only way, why is it not benefiting everyone? Surely we should have systems where everyone has an equal opportunity. And I think it takes a lot of work, and that's what's hard. It's very easy to like read one article or read a headline and post it because you know that that's what's the right thing to do is. But if you really want to make change, and that's the kind of change it'll like spread to the people around you and your children or whatever else, your family and friends. It's that deeper understanding of the way the world is set up is wrong, and we have to be the agents for change to try and give everyone an equal opportunity.
Yeah, because on that, a quote that really has been hitting me as well is that the privilege of having to learn about something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is a big one. And I kind of thought about it, but hadn't really thought about it as deeply as I thought about it recently after seeing that quote, is that, Black people, people of color, all sorts of marginalized people don't have the benefit to learn about these issues. You experience it as far as I can remember. My first vivid racial memory is from when I was 5 years old. So that's a thing as well, is that that's why people get frustrated, is that we say when people, comms are saying, oh, it's so nice, people are learning, but it's hard not to be a little bit bitter and say, oh, great, so happy that you're learning, freaking finally, especially when it's people that you've been around for years and have said things for years to. For years and years. Someone I called out and my family called out when I was 13 is only now posting and, doing good things and saying nice things and happy, and like I'm happy for them. But I'm never going to be associated with them because of all and I'm like, it took you this long when I really called you out a long time ago. And so it's great that it's happening, but I'm still going to be a bit bitter about it because you know.
Yeah, and sorry to jump in before Sunny, but and I think that's what's painful about the forgiveness narrative that white people force upon Black people. It's always, well, you should forgive, like this is a lesson, like let's move past this. But it's like pain and trauma and feeling less than and having it feel like that's the way the world is truly a horrible experience. And to have people sort of say, well, you know, I've learned now and I'm growing and please forgive me. It's like, I don't always want to forgive. I want to be allowed to be angry, and we're never allowed to be angry. So I think if you do find yourself apologizing to someone for something you've said, or let them be angry, we're allowed to be angry. Everything's like stacked and the odds are stacked against us. And you need to accept that you may never get the apology and that person may never accept you. And that's the level of damage you've done to someone. And then I think people start to understand sort of how their actions or even inactions. I even remember people who didn't say anything and they're just as complicit as the person who said something to me. So yeah, I think it's just, I think for white people to note that you can apologize, you can learn, but some people may not forgive you and they're under no obligation to do so either.
Yeah, I was gonna say something, but that was really heavy, and now I'm reflecting. But yeah, but I understand it's like you get to be bitter, and you there's all these, like, even with all of this coming up, there's memories like you forgot about that are like coming back, and I'm like, oh shit, here we go again, right? And it's things when you were younger or as a kid. I remember that you just like, that was all you knew, so that was kind of how it was. Like I grew up in the Free State, and it was playgroup, so playgroup like 3 or something. And I remember all the families wanted to, like, signed a petition and wanted me kicked out of the school because I was the only person of color, right? And I didn't know about that until like when it came up like years later, and I'm like now thinking back to 3-year-old me who was like happily just playing, living my life, making friends with all these kids. Well, I'm shaking, but meanwhile their parents were looking at me and being like, I don't want her here. Why? Because I wasn't white, right? And then it's like I think maybe I'm grateful for my parents almost maybe shielding me from those things. And maybe also being Indian, where I could almost flip flop to whatever closest thing was safe, right? But now also in that I've lost part of my identity. I don't know really where I fit in, especially being in like a white only school. It was like, okay, I need to be whatever is happening around me, right? And I don't know who I really am in terms of like my Indian identity, my Mauritian identity. All I know is like there's a Sunaina that lived in the Free State. There's a Sunaina that when she goes to Durban, she'll just be whatever the Durban people are. When I go to Mauritius, I'll be that person. When I'm in university, I have to put on like a really like, or like in the work world, I need to put on like not a white voice, but a really like powerful male voice so they can listen to me, flip flopping between these things. Yeah, so I don't think that was coherent, but it was just words. Yeah.
I think for me, like the thing that makes me really upset or like angry is like, why did I in high school and primary school, why was I so quiet about these issues?
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking back and I'm like, damn girl, like why didn't you just say something? Why didn't you open your mouth? Why didn't you do something? Like, and I feel like that anger kind of builds up now, and it's this unhealthy anger where I'm like very snappy and I'm very quick to be like, ugh, because I feel like I need to kind of account for all those years that I was so quiet about these issues. Like I owe it to myself, to my younger self, to like all the other blacks. Like I need to speak up now, and I need to speak up now, Whereas in before I was more like, laid back, a bit like whatever. And it's just this weird, it's like a regretful anger. And I don't know how to explain it. It's like it's guilt as well as a black person. Like I could have done more, but I didn't do anything then. But now I'm speaking up now, and it's this awkward thing of feeling guilty and regretting certain things, and it's I don't know.
But I think it's also like when you were so young, we didn't have the words. Like you knew something was wrong, and then someone would tell, and like even if you wanted to say, "Oh, that was racist," you knew someone would ask you, "Well, why is it racist?"
And you'd be like,
and you'd be, I feel like I should be the authority on what is racist. I really don't know why you're questioning me on what feels racist. But it's like you don't have the words, and you kind of, I feel the way I was socialized in a majority white school, and I think also having a privileged economic background, I was in a lot of white spaces. You kind of feel like, well, this is the norm. You don't really know there's anything else apart from these like microaggressions or blatant racism. So I totally get what Isma's saying. I kind of look back and I'm like, if only I had the words and the understanding, like I would have showed them. Do you know what I mean? But it's also fear. It's fear and wanting to say something and rocking the boat, and you're a minority anyway. And also I felt like, I don't know about the other people of color and black people, because my parents were working really hard, I had a guilt of trying to bring them into issues. So I was always fighting by myself. And I feel like with white people were always willing to bring in their parents, and you're just going to be you against someone and their mom who had time. So yeah, that's
no. On that point, that's exactly what I was. Sorry, but exactly on that point, for me, I relied a lot on my mom explaining things to me because things didn't make sense. With my sister, one instance for her that didn't make sense was when some girl said that they were allergic to her hair, and she goes, "Oh, shame!" Like wow, she was young, and she goes, "Oh, shame! You're allergic to hair," and then the girl goes, "No, your hair." And so my sister innocently comes home and she goes, "Oh, shame! This girl." And Mama has to go, "Oh, not so shame." And a lot of the times, there's a lot of things. I mean, I'm so lucky that my mom is a fighter. Like a total fighter. And of course, she can use her privilege as a white woman. She can use it whenever. Wow, they would try her, hey? They would go, "We think your daughter, yeah, it's a problem. She'd go, "Oh, really? Oh, you think?" And she can use that, and she does. And I'm forever grateful for that, because if I didn't have that, and I grew up and a lot of people do, you feel guilty in yourself for feeling that this is wrong. And that's the big thing, is that I often the times I'm like, am I in the wrong for thinking this is wrong? Why am I feeling upset about this? And if you don't have the reassurance to say, no, you're not wrong. They are wrong. That person is wrong. That is the wrong situation. You're going to grow up not being as self-confident as you should have been, and not speaking out on the issues, and that's a really serious problem.
That's fair.
I think what you said, Fiona, about like bringing parents into it, I always think like I went to a private school. I have a degree from UCT. My parents worked really hard. This is a small problem. Why should I address it, right? Like, let it slide. Especially in high school, when we were in such a like enclosed environment, you're like, if this is my only issue, it's fine, right? There's so many people in the world that are going.
I'm so privileged to be where I am.
Yeah. And then I think I was even reading comments of like people like white girls saying to like black girls who went to the same school, saying, "But you're privileged as well. You're just as privileged as me. You went to the same school as me." No, right? Right?
Intersectionality.
Yeah. There's little issues. You're so right. There's little issues. A lot of the time, what I'm talking about is my mom fighting is because it was a systemic, school issue. We fought a lot with the school. I hardly brought up the small things. Was when I was a kid and I just, hey, tell me about your day, and you go, oh well, but definitely the smaller things are, unless it directly, but with systemic things, oof. I mean, hair, I'm sure.
It's such a big thing. Yeah.
And I hate that I just didn't see it in high school. Sorry for cutting you off, my lady. Like, I did see it when it started becoming an issue, but I hate that, like, I was just blind to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of things that are now, it's like, I hate that I was that person. I wish like now me could go back to like old me and be like, for some things be like, I'm sorry that you feel this way, and then for other things be like, stand up more. And it's like this balance of like, I don't know.
But I think also it's like you did the best you could in the situation that you did. I mean, we know the high school we went to. If we had sort of brought up things as often as there was issues, you would have been a problem person, and that carries a negative stigma. And it's like you kind of just trying to survive in the environment as best as you can. So I think as much as we want to feel harsh on ourselves, there was only so much we could have done at literally the age of 15. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there was a video, I don't know if you guys have seen like on Twitter and stuff, about girls in privileged schools, white girls in privileged schools singing to a song that has the N-word in it, right?
Yeah.
And then there was a video of a black girl as well with her white friend singing it as well. And then I was talking on my friendship group, and we were like, someone was like, yeah, she should have done better, like you shouldn't have let that allowed. And then when we spoke about it more, we were kind of like, but she was doing the best she can in that situation. And in that situation, she doesn't know any better. Like she's like, oh, it's like to be friends with her, like this is what we do, like it's no bigger of a deal, you know.
Sometimes the choice is between like being friends with racists or not having friends at all. It's like sometimes I would like to sit with someone at break. Do you know what I mean? There's like only so much I can go to the library by myself.
Yeah. And I think for me, like it's also like picking the issues you're gonna fight about. Like growing up, my parents would always be like, hey, if they ask you where you're from, you say you're South African, you know? Like you will get peanut butter and jam for school because that's what everyone else is getting for school. You know, even though you eat something different at home, when you go to school, you're eating this. And like when I was telling my parents about fees must fall and stuff, they're like, my girl, these are not your battles to fight. Because at the end of the day, when you are taken, they're going to ask for your papers, they're going to ask for your things, and you'll be alone. You know, it's deciding when to speak up and in which spaces you can speak up, because not all spaces are for you, you know? So it's like juggling between like what your parents know and what they want for you and what you think is also right and what will, you know, help moving forward for other people. So it's just like this awkward, as Sunena said, like this flip-flop, like where do you decide to be, you know? Yeah, it's hard sometimes.
And fees must fall is a big one. Foreigner, yeah. Fees must fall is a big one, and with being a foreigner, because you know a lot of those fees must fall people are xenophobic. Exactly. You know that. You must know that.
And misogynistic.
And you know, let me get me started on those ones. We all know that one. But with fees must fall, there's so many issues that come with that, and so many people that decided to jump on the bandwagon who had no right to, in my opinion, and hijack something that in the end, what happened? Where, right? Oh, do we have free education for poor people? No. What's going on there? And I hate to see this failure. And as I said, failure of movements has a lot to do with how you were fighting. And you're fighting for one issue. Who is it? As, you know, Sunny was talking about. Let's get the black man over the fence. And we hope the trickle-down economics. I love that trickle-down. It never works.
The fast and trickle-down economics.
It never works, and it makes me so upset because I had so much hope. Hey, I was so naive.
I hope that dream has died.
Yo, I was hopeful, and I was like, yo, you know, Then I went to one intersectionality talk, and I watched those heads of Fees Must Fall walk out the door. And I was like, oh, where are you going? And then the hope was like...
I think that's the hard thing is like I go between being really, really optimistic and then really, really sad, and then I get my hopes up and then it's sad. Like especially my brother's younger than me, and I I think I brought this up before, and like I got really excited that I'm like, oh my god, this generation's so good. Stories that he tells me, like I'm really excited. And then those videos came out about white girls saying the N-word, and I'm like,
It wasn't just white girls. Wait, are you talking about that thread that had the names of the kids and the grades that they were on? That was my
No, I
little
didn't see
sister,
that.
guys. Oh no. But anyway, that was my little sister.
He started the
Yeah.
thread. That's so funny.
I was so proud.
It was
I've
just
never been
like
so
a
proud.
live. They went live on it. This was before the protest, yeah. So my brother was just watching it live, and yeah, but
That's sweet.
Embarrassing.
Oh man.
Should we wrap
Anyway,
up, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Not to cut it
hungry.
off.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
This was good, guys.
This was good. This felt like a productive conversation.
Yeah.
I'd love to just say like thank you, because I would never have this kind of conversation if it wasn't for this group of people, and this would never happen. So I've learned a lot, and I'm grateful could be a part of it.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you to everyone for being so
Go
honest
challenge.
and open.
Go challenge those racists, huh? You ready?
Yeah.
I'm ready. I've already been drafting a message.
Towards the white people, do you think you would want to know about the stuff that has happened in that people have experienced from you? Or do you think, I must...
Wait, sorry, just
like someone said, these are the things I felt you did that were racist towards me.
I love that.
Or something towards me.
100%.
Do you think you're open for that?
Yeah, I would too.
10,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also just like moving on from it. You need to know if there's something that you're unconscious of that you've done, because I do think that that's the thing, is that something that you might perceive when it's not a blatant act.
Yeah, you think it's
sometimes
normal.
it is like something that you think is normal, and then when it comes to awareness, then you're like,
I read this thing where it said the problem is that people almost have this idea of good and bad, and if you don't do overtly racist things and you don't say racist things, then you're one of the good people, and then you're not a racist. But it's like you said, all of the things that you do that you don't think you're doing. So I would definitely want people to say, in the past or in the present, you did this and I thought it was racist, and to me, I just want to let you know so you can be better yourself, because you might not know you're doing it. But yeah, I would definitely want to know so you can grow and you can learn from it and you can be better.
Because it was like I was saying with allyship, is that a lot of the time I've pulled away from, especially in university, I've pulled away from so many white people because of the stuff that they've said that I've never brought up to them because I was like, at the time. And so I just wanted to see if that was an option because, I think I need to get on that train.
Yeah.